Hiya, Wasn't he here? Just chiming in to say we may have underestimated how long we'd end up talking when planning the format, so for the Founding Review we'll only have unspoiled conversation at the start of the first and end of the third episode. So tune in for episode 3 if you want to see our closing thoughts for the Founding. Thanks. Of Their Lives is a story. It's a short story. It's listed as a short story, except for at the start of the book, where Abnett himself calls it a novella. It's a short story where the men of Tanith end up going out on recon to a supposedly safe area. It's fairly early on in the chronology of the Tanith. I think it's one of their second or third proper engagements. It's before the events of First and Only.
Yes, as I said, it's kind of like the bridging almost. It feels like for the character development, it feels like the bridging gap between the short stories and First and Only.
Now, you say it bridges a gap, but as Jim mentioned earlier, this was written 15 years after First and Only in Ghostmaker.
Yes, well, maybe Abnett looked back at those and felt like there could have been a middle ground between the reactions, between the interaction between Gaunt and the ghosts. That's how I felt, at least from reading that book, is that in Ghostmaker we see the very, very early stages. We see the meeting Gaunt even. Yep. And then in First and Only, they feel pretty comfortable with him for the most part. Ron is obviously still angry, as always, but in general, everyone feels like they've pretty much gone along pretty well. I think is it Of Their Lives where Larkin actually seems to take great issue with Corbeck, and we actually see a sort of a weird interaction between the ghost command structure.
Yes, I think I know what you mean. Well, Larkin is like, you wouldn't do that to me, would you, Corbeck? Because they are longtime friends.
Yeah, you wouldn't write me up, would you? Like, do you think you're better than us now just because you're a colonel? Yeah, Larkin. It's sort of like almost the first conversation that Larkin has been able to have with Corbeck about the fact that Corbeck is now supposedly above him in the command structure, and they're getting used to that idea because they were friends before.
Do we want to go through like the basic plot of it first?
Well,
sure, go ahead.
It's quite simple. They go out. There's a very bleak mood about everybody. They kind of feel like they're there on a what's the word? It's basically a punishment that they're being forced to sit and do this in a safe area. So they go out into this safe area on recon. Everything goes to shit, and they end up having to send Kathran back to try and deliver a message. And They are making a fighting retreat out, and the rest of the Gaunts who are left behind, the ghosts who are left behind, catch up, and they basically get rescued on their way out. So this isn't a story about things that happen so much as a story that's it's examining the characters and the mood of the regiment.
I just remembered. They do catch up because Kathran goes back, but
also
they were already on their way, weren't they?
Yes, because
Milo told
he gave the numbers to Dorden, the command code or something, and Dorden's like, that's a bit suspicious.
That's Gaunt's command code. How did you have these numbers? Because he dreamed the numbers, apparently. So this, I guess, is actually This was actually the first solid indication that he does have some sort of weird powers. Because the rest of it is, as you said,
remembering this was written 15 years later.
Well, okay, chronologically, as I was reading through this, even in the later books, out of these 3 books and the short stories, I think this is the only solid mention of any actual power that Milo has.
Sure. Well, Ghostmaker kind of explores it a bit, doesn't it? But yeah.
Well, they suggest it. That's the thing. They keep suggesting it, but it's always a grey.
This is a lot more explicit.
Is it not?
It's like there's no way you just happened to guess those numbers. You weren't lucky in guessing and predicting it early. Yeah, I get what you
exactly. He had a dream. It was of Gaunt's command numbers for some reason, and that is pretty explicit indication in my mind that he has some sort of powers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's interesting. I'd completely forgotten about that actually until you just mentioned the plot.
Mm-hmm. The mood of the thing, I want to say the mood of it is very dreary, and you find out why once you've read some of Ghostmaker, because of where this slots into the chronology. There's a theme of hidden information again. What is that letter in your pocket, Gaunt? Vaughn's got the letter. He knows what it says. We don't know what it says yet. And then later on, we find out it's his idiot friend Commissar Blennon, who's you've got a crap post there. Well, I can get you out of there if you want.
Is that the guy that turns up in the first book?
Yes, he is the one who was his friend at the Skolem.
Yes,
and the one he shows up and saves Gaunt.
Yes,
in the spider.
well, sort of.
He first intrudes on him awkwardly, and then later on he actually saves him. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I felt like that was the same guy. I wasn't 100% sure.
Yep, same guy. So we have some more of that managing information, although he doesn't tease us with it as long as the stuff he teases us with in First and Only. Jim, you mentioned about the writing style being different in A Ghost Return. I didn't feel it so much in A Ghost Return, but I really felt it here. And I almost want to say it was like to its detriment to me, because I felt it was really getting bogged down in the details. And that's maybe more of a personal thing. Like, I'm not too interested in like the solid detail like that. I don't need to hear about like how the trenches are constructed and such, you know.
Did you notice that the writing perspective was different in this book compared to all the others as well? I'm sure I can't remember exactly what it is. I'm not a literacy expert, but I'm sure the perspective of the writing was different. Like, he's describing things as they happen, as opposed to they happened, if that makes sense.
I think I know what you mean. I mean, it's the thing I noticed the most is that a lot more of it is from Gaunt, and the stuff from Gaunt is a lot more introspective. We are really in Gaunt's head. Rather than, we're not just seeing out of Gaunt's eyes, we're in Gaunt's head. A lot more in this book, I feel like.
I don't know. I did notice that particularly because we obviously see a lot of Gaunt's thoughts in the other books too. But
normally it's only to say what we immediately need to know. You know, normally in the other book is here's what we need to know about what's happening. Here's what Gaunt thinks, or just enough to give him like a bit of character. It's not about Gaunt's introspection, but of their lives there's a lot of introspection from Gaunt and deliberation. We see things like his really deliberate reasoning about how he's behaving around people and treating them. Like, it's almost like really methodical about, I'm going to treat him this way. I'm not going to call Catherine my name because it'll sound like I'm trying too hard. I don't want to look like I'm trying to be familiar. Things like that.
There's that scene with Catherine where he talks to Catherine about his lost girlfriend or lost fiance. I think it was.
He like comes in and shows.
Gaunt acts very differently there than I'm used to him being, and I think it's because, as I said, it's like a middle ground between when he first met the ghosts. He's
getting familiar with them, and we see his process of that here.
I will say something weird about that though is that he feels like a younger Gaunt, and that's the strange thing. Like the Gaunt we see in A Ghost Return,
mm-hmm.
feels like a young Gaunt. The way he acts, the way he thinks, the way he talks, he feels like he's unsure. He feels like he's more flippant about things. And then in the first book, the second book, and the third book, all throughout all of those, he's the same Gaunt. He doesn't feel like he's that different in any of them, even when he first meets the ghost.
I feel like
he feels very solid
when he first meets the ghost, but we'll get to that. Oh, I get what you mean.
But he still feels
more
very.
He's very assured. Like,
he himself in the way he behaves. Like, he behaves differently to them, obviously, but he doesn't think and behave differently himself. He is the same Gaunt. Whereas in the short story, The Ghost Return, and this one as well, he feels younger. Like, he feels more flippant. Like, he talks with Catherine. He's like, "Sure, I can tell you that you'll find another girl somewhere on a battlefield if that makes you feel better." It just feels very, very
but I think some of that is like,
serious.
I mean, like I said, he's. You see a bit of his mentality, like the reason he's speaking to him like this, and it feels like very deliberate choices on Gaunt's part to interact with them in the way he's interacting with them. I feel that's the impression I got.
Maybe it's that. Okay,
yeah.
I think that's pretty much that book, though. I mean,
I think it is.
Yeah, from that perspective, it's a little bit different. It obviously says he's written much later, so it's kind of interesting from that.
It's a cozy little book. I think probably what's more interesting here is when we look at Ghostmaker and see where it fits in. So, on that note, do you want to move on to Ghostmaker? Actually, one thing I want to mention about Ghostmaker that is interesting, the version of Ghostmaker I read had of their lives at the start of it. So in the newer publications, even outside of that omnibus, they are like, read of their lives as this first story before Ghostmaker. That's interesting. So Ghostmaker is a collection of short stories that are like character studies for Tanith first and only characters. You see, like, you've got like a little bit of like bracketing story, like from a present perspective, where Gaunt's moving around, he's having a chat with people in a camp, and then the story pops out. But really, it's more like 11 stories, 10 flashbacks, and then one set in the present.
Yes, and some of them are very character specific, and some of them are more like general Ghost interactions. So, for an example of that, like the first one,
I was going to say, pop quiz.
Of the Ghosts.
What is the first one, Abraham?
I think the first story is the one where they fight the Chaos Space Marines, the World Eaters, is it not?
No.
Where they meet the Basilisk.
That is the second
group?
Story.
Oh.
The
What's the first one,
story is Ghostmaker. It's the evacuation of Tanith. And then it's there's a little chat on the ship where he assigns for Colonel and Major. He puts Korbeck as Colonel and Vaughn as Major. And then it's first action on... Is it called Black Shard? It's their first action. Where Gaunt tries to kill... Sorry, where Vaughn tries to kill Gaunt.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And
I wrote in my notes, Vaughn tries to kill Gaunt. And I was just thinking, how does that fit in? Surely that's not the first story. No,
yes,
you're right though. But it comes with all of the rest of the information about how they actually took off from Tanith.
Yep.
That's an interesting setup.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I thought
I want to, I want to go quick fire. What are the different stories, and then look at them a bit more. So that was Ghostmaker, Evacuation of Tanith. Second one is the one you mentioned there, where they are with the artillery crews, the Ketzog Serpents, which is called A Blooding. Jim, do you know what the third one is?
I actually am looking it up because I've completely forgotten. Sounds and Fury.
Yes, which is it's a character study of McCall, where he faces off against a dreadnought.
Yes, a chaos.
Yeah.
Yes, and then doesn't take credit.
Yeah. Number 4.
The next one is the Navy guns, where they call down... The thing is, most of these for me are all... they're all positioned by... They're more detailed by what happened in them. Like what weird event... One weird event happens in each of them.
So the Hollows
in
of
this
Hell.
case, it's using Navy guns.
Yes, we get to see the Navy. It's a look at Korbeck when Korbeck thinks Gaunt is dead, and we see him take command. Number 5.
That's a good point.
Angels of Bucephalon.
Yes.
This is Larkin's introspective, right?
Yep. Number 6.
That hideous strength.
Bragg?
Yes, correct. Number 7.
Permafrost.
Rawn and Gaunt.
Yes. Yep. Number 8.
D-Day Imperial Guard Edition.
No. Blood Oath,
No?
yes. Not D-Day. Number 8 is the
what happens
Chief
in Blood
Medic
Oath?
Dorden, where him and some volunteers
yes.
are like, we're not leaving. We're going to protect these wounded.
and Gaunt is like, yes, my Chief Medical Officer. Please stay with the enemy.
I got big MASH vibes from Blood Oath. You know, MASH, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, the famous American...
I'm aware of what MASH is. I've never seen it, so I can't relate. I'm too young, despite I don't think being that much younger than you. I've not seen it, I'm afraid.
But yeah, it was focused on Dorden, wasn't it? But also Dorden's relationship with Korbeck.
Yeah, we learned a few things there. Number 9 was D-Day in the Imperial Guard. It's called A Simple Plan, and it follows Kathran. It's kind of a they land on the beaches. They miss the beaches. Yeah. Number 10.
Witch Hunt.
So Witch Hunt is the story about.
This was Milo.
Yes.
Yeah, Milo and yet another fucking Inquisitor.
Yes. And then we have 11, which is set in the present, which is called Some Dark and Secret Purpose. And we look at them. Well, let's get to that one, because that's the one that was solidly like, this is the current. This is written for this. This is the whole thing. We'll get to that. Let's get to that one. But first, those 10 stories, 3 of them had been written before First and Only. Do you want to guess which ones?
Bragg. I think the Bragg one probably was.
Let's have 3 guesses.
My 3 would be A Blooding, Sound and Fury, and Angel of Bucephalon.
All right, Abraham, what are your
I think it's probably Probably the ones that feel like more like character introspections for me. Probably Larkins, Braggs, and maybe the doctors. So there was that what was that Blood Oath or something?
Yeah.
I don't know the names of the stories.
I can reveal. The first one is Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker is the first Gaunt Ghost story that was written.
Okay.
The second one that was written was A Blooding. And the third one is The Hollows of Hell, which is Corbeck taking command and the Navy officers doing their thing. Those 3 stories were in Inferno magazine before First and Only was written. And Abnett was writing... You got one.
What do I win?
Yeah, you can brag about it. You can brag about your 33% score being superior to over 0%.
Oh, man.
So he wrote those 3. He wrote Vermilion level, and before it was published, he was asked, hey, first, you want to write a proper Gaunt Ghost novel? And he went, okay. And he made that out of Vermilion level. We'll get to Vermilion level in a bit. Chronology, I want to talk about quickly before we look at the stories, because this is interesting. So, A Blooding, we have like some bleak things happen, and Of Their Lives is actually set after A Blooding. So, that's why it's so bleak. They have basically just come out of like, we basically won this war, but then we got hit by artillery, friendly fire intentionally by the general, and that's why it is such a bleak mood in Of Their Lives, because that's where it fits.
Okay, that makes sense. Was it the same world, or?
Yep, same world. In fact, the Quetzalcoatl Serpents are even helping with artillery shelling as they escape at the end, because Rawn called them in.
Yes, yeah.
And now the question, where do you think First and Only stories fit in all of those? I can tell you that there was a point...
The general book?
I can tell you that in those stories, there was a point where some of these, like, the stories up to that point happened before First and Only, and the stories after this point happen after First and Only.
Oh god, I'd have no idea.
Yeah, that's 2 of us.
So, that point is actually after A Blooding and Of Their Lives. Immediately after Of Their Lives, that is where First and Only picks up. And then all of these other, like, looking back introspectives are set after First and Only. That's my understanding looking at it.
Okay.
And the only real sign, like, which I thought was interesting, because you go through the McCall story, the Corbeck story, the Larkin story, the Bragg story, and the Gaunt and Rawn story, and the Dorden story, and none of these really give any sign that they happened after First and Only. The first sign you have of something happening after First and Only is in A Simple Plan, where you see Domor and Val with the Augmetics. Then you're like, this is after First and Only.
Yes. Something I mentioned earlier is that you see the blind guy with new eyes.
Yeah.
So that bit definitely had to have happened after First and Only.
That is the only one to me that felt like it happened after First and Only. And maybe Witch Hunt, because Witch Hunt is setting you up for 11, for the last bit with the Inquisitor.
Yes.
With that in mind, do we want to dig into some of these? Ghostmaker.
Yeah, sure.
What do we think about Ghostmaker?
I guess we find about the Tamith. We find about like their planet and how they got off the planet and what they lost and how they lost it.
Yep. We learn how Corbeck and Rawn ended up in charge. Very whimsical to me.
It was a bit whimsical. Just he turns up with 2 other guys, one being Major Rawn, and was the other Larkin?
No, the other was Milo.
Oh yes, of course. They brought him because they thought Gaunt might like him.
Yeah, like stop him from getting too angry. He won't shoot us if we've got a kid in here.
Meanwhile, Rawn is carrying a pistol, ready to shoot him, and
yep.
Yeah.
And then they. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, so obviously Corbin is put in charge basically based on that meeting, right? But then I guess he would have had to have somehow been given a sort of, well, they said deputization, wasn't it? They send a deputization across from the
he asked
carrier.
them to choose who is going to come. Who do you want to represent you? And he goes, they chose you. They've done my job for me.
So I don't think that's how it happened.
Because all their command structure had been lost when leaving Tanith, basically.
Yeah, but Gaunt doesn't know they're coming. So Gaunt gets told by his
Gaunt gets told they're coming, and he tells them tell them to pick 3 men and send them in.
Okay, yeah, true. But 3 men from the deputization, so they've already been narrowed down to like a small group of people. Anyway, that was what my interpretation was.
Right. Yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
So yeah, that's how Kolbeck becomes the leader of the ghosts, other than Gaunt. He comes to meet Gaunt and talk about why their planet died and why Gaunt left the planet to die, and took them away. Okay, so that's it was interesting from that perspective. And then we see their first mission.
We see their first mission where they wow everybody. Where it's like, where have they gone? This repeating theme of, and then they turned around and all of the ghosts had disappeared, which we keep.
They have some major Batman vibes going on.
Oh yes.
I mean, that happens later on with Gaunt. You see Gaunt. Oh no, it was that book. Sorry, it was the one we just talked about. Of their lives, yeah. Gaunt turns around and finds himself standing on the edge of a cliff on his own.
Or standing
because apparently they've all disappeared.
Yep. We see in the TANF, we see Gaunt like, oh, I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical about these guys. And then by the end of that story, he's like, holy shit. They're pretty good. We see Rawn having his first try at killing Gaunt. I say first try. We have having his try at killing Gaunt. There's kind of a thing in Permafrost. But yeah, we see him try and kill Gaunt. Gaunt punches him out and saves him, fighting past Chaos forces with Rawn in tow to drag him out of there alive.
Gotta feel pretty bad if you're Major Rawn in that situation.
Absolutely mogged. And it's
so that's Ghostmaker,
well.
Right?
That is Ghostmaker.
Yes. So that's where it ends, though, right? Just after that.
Yep. And then Of Their Lives is set after that, where like as punishment for them being into the punch, they get left with shit duties.
I see. Okay. So then we get the World Eaters.
Yes.
Where the World Eaters turn up and ambush the basilisks, and then get counter ambushed by the ghosts.
Yep.
You said that the Space Marines get kind of shredded in this fight, and they seem pretty weak.
I would expect 7 World Eaters to
take on 15 custodians.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I would expect them to take out. I would expect you to need more than 70 men to take out 7 World Eaters. I'll say that.
So there is a lot of descriptions in that scenario that lead me to understand how strong they are. It's not like they are portrayed as being.
They're almost like glass cannons, the way they're described, though. Like
no, not at all. One of the descriptions. Yes,
one
true.
Of them. One of them is just like he gets up again at the end, and then he gets shot. Right.
No, one of them is described as taking as much punishment as you'd think to take down a Lehman Russ, or something along those lines.
Fair enough.
So there is a description on both ends.
It's just like the World Eaters attacking, and very quickly they are taken out. Like it happens in like 2 paragraphs. It's like 2 paragraphs, and all the World Eaters are dead practically.
Yeah, you sort of wonder how they did it, because obviously the armor there is one thing. The armor should be able to, you'd think, would be pretty effective against the lasguns. So they'd have to use like anti-tank charges and stuff.
There are stories where World Eaters just sit there and where Chaos Space Marines just sit there and just take the hits and do not care from lasguns. Like, yeah.
It interests me that one of the basilisks has an autocannon mounted on its rear platform.
I don't know enough about God. That sounds very silly, right?
It does sound really silly.
Why would that be? Why would that be completely out of the question? You've got all these armored like machines. Why would you not mount an autogun on some of them?
Not an autogun.
Well, he's a cannon.
An autocannon.
Which is a full-blown tank-sized gun, and this is on the back platform of a basilisk.
Yeah.
Are you sure that wasn't maybe a miswording in the way that I just did?
Right in front of me. Pintle-mounted autocannon mounted on his vehicle's rear.
I
mean by Abnett, not you. Sorry,
yeah.
I mean, do you think that's maybe a miswording by Abnett there?
I think it might be. He says it's pintle-mounted. I have a hard time imagining a pintle-mounted... Wait, autocannon? Yeah. No, autocannon can be. That's like an autocannon can be like a heavy bolter tier weapon, right? So that makes sense. You wouldn't normally expect to see like that on a basilisk, I guess, but it's not like too crazy. It's not a battle cannon. It's an autocannon. It's still a bit...
I don't know how big the basilisks You know how they are in terms of scale. So
They are about the size of a Lehman Russ, I would say, roughly.
And how does this compare to a person in this world?
You know what a Lehman Russ looks like. I'm sure you played Dawn of War.
I do. I know what a Lehman Russ looks like, but I also know like the scales are not right in that game sometimes.
I mean, the scales are barely right on the actual tabletop. Like, you know a rhino's a rhino because you can't fit 10 Space Marines in it, in spite of it having a transport capacity of 10.
I mean, I also know in Dawn of War they eventually added aircraft, and the aircraft look absolutely tiny compared to what I would expect them to be.
The aircraft were shoehorned in. That is, you know what? I could go on a long time about what happened in that Dawn of War game, and we're not going to do that on this podcast.
Let's throw a couple of things in. One, yes, these World Eaters do die relatively easily. One of them gets killed by getting set on with flamed. Another one is punctured dozens of times by less gunfire.
That does suggest their armor is shit.
Yeah,
Either that or they're unarmored, which would be on point with what I've seen of World Eaters in the past.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, of all the Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines to be a little unarmored, World Eaters do have a bit of like that gladiator vibe. Like Khan runs around without a left arm's armor, so yeah.
Yeah, although they are described as having red armor in the beginning.
We're going to get to that someday. It's going to be fun.
Oh god, yes. So, this story, it starts off with that. We have a little bit of like, oh, they're getting along with the Quetzalcoatl serpents. One of them was like, this Rawn guy's kind of just chilling here, looking a little moody on his own. I'm going to try and strike up conversation with him. How's this Gaunt guy, Rawn? Rawn's like, I'm going to kill him one day. It's like, okay, Rawn, you have no chill. He like literally
he says it in the most edgiest way imaginable.
Yes, like Rawn.
One day I'm going to kill him with my bare hands. It's like, okay then, back off.
So, yes.
Another thing I should bring up, because this is important for the next one, is this is a story that introduces two characters who we're going to see in Necropolis, Major Gilbeer and General Sturm of the Volpone Blue Bloods.
Yes.
So this story, we're going to see them further on in this story, in Ghostmaker as well. This is the story that sets up who the Volpone Blue Bloods are. And this happens before First and Only. So the Volpone Blue Bloods are the Ghost's first experience of like conflict within the Imperial Guard, and like I think it like leaves them really weird, jaded towards the Guard, which you see in a lot of their lives. Written 50 years
It's weird
later.
because of the chronology. Because of the chronology, they are the first experience of the Ghosts, but not our first experience because we already have the Jantine as the antagonist group.
But at that point,
and then suddenly they get killed off in the end of First and Only.
First and Only, this like by the time we reach First and Only, they have like just come out of this experience with the Volpone Blue Bloods ordering artillery to be fired on their position. So that's hardened them a little bit towards the bullshit with the Jantine patricians. Although
I mean,
this is for the Ghosts,
is General Stern?
This is worth noting. For Ghosts, it is their first experience. Gaunt, on the other hand, has like when he catches up to before First and Only happened, Gaunt has already had his reckoning when he was with the Hurricanes, with Uncle Dersius for having killed his father.
Yes.
Which is something we glossed over and didn't talk about before. But yeah, Uncle Dersius, good old Uncle Dersius who killed Gaunt's father. Gaunt already knows that this sort of shit happened in the Guard. He's taken his uncle to task for it and killed him in a duel over it in First and Only. So for him, he knows this shit happens. He already has this enmity with the Jantine patricians, and then this happens with the Blue Bloods, and it's the first time that's happened for the Ghosts.
He is the political officer, though, so I guess from his perspective, like he should be more in tune with that anyway.
Yes.
So Stern, General Stern, you say?
Not just Stern.
You're talking about that.
The comically evil general of this one.
They're all comically evil. This is the thing, like Stern and
Sturm.
Is it Sturm? Is that the name?
Not just Sturm.
You're confusing him with the general from Dawn of War Winter Assault, the Cadian who's also named.
I'm not, because I haven't played those games for like a decade. But what I was going to say is that he and the general from the first book are almost like they feel almost interchangeable. Like when you see them, he is set up in an almost like identical fashion.
Yes, although Sturm feels less like a career, less like it's like a different flavor because Dravir is driven like he's a narcissist after his career, whereas Sturm is a narcissist because he thinks he's better than everybody already because he's a Volpone.
Sturm is absolutely the stereotype from World War One generals. Like he and I can't remember his second in command, but he and his second in command are sitting there and they're just like Gilbert. And it's like, those ragtag bunch of people down there. Wouldn't it be a shame if our artillery were to fire on them?
Yeah, he's just over the top evil. Yeah,
it's beyond. There's like Dr. Evil levels of.
And where in First and Only the Vitrian Dragoons were contrasted against the Jantine Patricians, here the Ketzog Serpents are contrasted against the Blue Bloods, and we see them he's arguing against the orders, but follows them anyway. And then at the end, he comes in and is like, Gaunt didn't hit me. Fuck you.
Yeah, my gun
after driving
smacked me in the face.
After driving his fucking basilisk through the gates.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
They fuck up because they're forced to. They're forced to take these actions they don't want to take. And they do follow the orders. But they kind of do a good showing around that of how they feel around it. They are not, they're honourable men. Yes.
And something worth noting for the audiobook people, since I listened to all three of these books on audiobook, the way that all of these secondary legions, secondary groups like the Volponi and the Dragoons and the Basilisk tank commanders, they all have an accent.
Oh,
now, I don't know what accent this is, but they have an accent, and it is pretty much the same accent as far as I can tell, from what I remember at least. Obviously, there's a bit of gap between listening to each one, but it seems like the same accent.
Did the Patricians and the Blue Bloods have the same accent, and then the Vitrians and the Serpents have the same accent? Or did they all four have the same not ghosts accent?
So the Jantine Patricians and the Blue Bloods both had a posh accent, obviously. Yeah. Why would they not have a posh accent?
Yeah.
And the other ones were a very foreign accent. I don't know where I'd say it's from. It just sounded foreign to me.
Okay, that's actually very interesting to hear.
Yes, so all three of them, and they all three of them had a similar accent, which is why to start with I wasn't sure if they were different groups, in the same sense that I wasn't sure if the Blue Bloods and the Jantine were different groups, because they sound the same on the audiobook, if that makes sense.
I get you. Okay. Do we have any other comments on the blooding? I think it's time for Sound and Fury then, which is a character study.
Sound and Fury.
Of McCall. We get to see how in tune with nature McCall is. We get to see how fucking badass McCall is. And we get to see how humble McCall is.
Yes. He's like the woodsman, isn't he? He's quiet, stealthy, doesn't want anything to do with anyone.
Yes.
I've heard him called the Wood Jedi.
The Wood Jedi.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So they just stumble across, while he's scouting with... let's say a less skilled Imperial Guardsman, they stumble across a Chaos Dreadnought.
Yes.
Just in the forest, as far as I can tell.
Yep. We don't know what legion. It doesn't matter. It's a fucking Dreadnought. McCall is able to recognize it as blind. We also see really lethal plants in that fucking place. With their fucking incredibly dangerous poisonous spines that they just shoot in any direction they've heard a noise from.
Yes, so sound-based attack plants. It was those are pretty lethal.
I don't like the sound.
Followed up by a Chaos Dreadnought.
McCall's almost like he knows. He just knows. Actually, we got to be quiet here. Watch this. Don't fucking triggers off.
He's always quiet anyway, though. That's the thing. I swear that guy he's probably just
McCall
all the
is
time.
The fucking boogeyman.
They later on make a fucking out McCall's McCall.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Actually, yeah. But I mean, kind of, but also McCall is still like the boogeyman. But yeah,
I was thinking the other one is even more.
You're thinking of. I know who you're thinking. You're thinking Is it McVenna?
Yeah, because McVenna is even more of a boogeyman than McCall,
and he isn't in Necropolis because he's in Necropolis, isn't he?
Yeah, this is later on, but McVenna ends up being far worse than McCall to the point where.
Let's not talk about that. Let's save that for when we get to it. But yeah, yes. McVenna is he does end up coming into his own, let's say. But yeah, McCall's...
So I don't know... I didn't recognize McCall from any of the other books, was my perspective.
McCall...
Did we see...
Yep. Oh yeah. He's in First and Only, and he's the head of the Scouts, and he is always portrayed as the badass who nobody fucking hears him. He's like, of all of the Tanith's ability, like with their ability to disappear, McCall is like turn it up to 11.
I guess that's fitting that I didn't notice him in the first book then.
Yeah, I mean, he's not as crazy and strong in the first book. In the first book, he's like, he almost ends up being a bit of a Mary Sue character. I mean, probably starting with killing a fucking Chaos Dreadnought here. But we definitely see occasions when he is not a Mary Sue character in this first set of books.
Okay.
And he's the kind of Mary Sue character where, you know what, actually, he's a fun character to read about, you know?
Yes, and it's supposed to come from his background, I guess. I mean, all of the ghosts are ridiculously good at stealth. They don't get lost, ever. Like, the first, the Ghost Return.
Especially McCall.
No, sorry, not the Ghost Return.
Ghostmaker.
One of the short stories here.
Yeah, Ghostmaker. He has there's a whole scene. I think it's in Ghostmaker. They have a whole scene where it's like the confusing winding tunnels and things, and the ghosts just, they know their way instinctively.
Yeah, they get through it in like 5 minutes. It's like, okay. Great. It's showing off their specific niche and how good they are in that area.
Do you remember how McCall kills the Dreadnought?
Doesn't he throw like an entire satchel of las charges or something at it?
No.
And then they explode.
Not quite. Close. He rigs his las gun to overcharge and explode, which I don't think that's how las guns work generally in most things. You can't just make them like do an explosion to a point that they will crack open a Dreadnought's armor. He rigs that to happen. It cracks open its armor, and then the plants shoot the Dreadnought through the crack in the armor and kill it.
Yes.
And then they're like, whoa,
that does seem
McCall.
Pretty extreme.
Yes. And then somebody shows up and goes, whoa, you killed a Dreadnought. And McCall's like, no, I just made an opening. The planet killed the Dreadnought. That summarizes pretty much that story. I didn't realize the most memorable story from this thing. This is the one I remembered, like going back into.
The one I remember is Larkin. Is the one, and Bragg. Larkin and Bragg are the one I remember.
Oh, would we have?
Although, to be honest,
Sound and Fury, because we're going to get to those two.
Yeah. Only you say about the las guns. They say at times that the las gun, it's got a battery. That the ammo is basically just a battery, a large, powerful battery.
Yes.
Which would make sense. I can't see that making sense technologically. But the don't they say later on in either this book or they're describing like Larkin's teaching. No, he's describing his gun and like all of the customizations that he's done to his specific rifle to make it a sniper. One of them is like an overcharged rounds.
So
for the battery pack.
The thing is overcharged, so it uses more charge at once. I think.
It's weird though because they describe it as rounds a lot as well, and that always made it like always seems confusion there between.
I think I think that is a thing. He's not got a las gun modified to be a sniper rifle, by the way. He has a sniper rifle las gun that he has modified. Just to clarify on that. But yeah. Well, let's get to that with Larkin. Do we have anything more on Sound and Fury? Any more comments about McCall being a badass?
There's pretty much more you can say about McCall being a badass.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Only that I'm curious as to where he's going to come in the future.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Let's not. Let's leave him curious. All right. Hollows of Hell is a story showcasing the ghosts adapting to difficult circumstances. They think Gaunt has died, and it's centered on Corbeck, who is taking charge. There's also a sort of look at Milo's position in the regiment, as he's with Gaunt and the Gaunt party.
Yes.
The Gaunt party basically is completely inconsequential what happens there, other than the fact that Milo's like, yeah, I got to go along and be a soldier. I think. But also,
the ghosts make friends everywhere they go.
Yes.
The thing. Like any of the obviously they have the conflict with the pompous, smarmy, blue blood legion.
The antagonists.
Legions. Yes. The antagonist, yes, specifically, but only because they are set up to be the antagonist. Everybody else, the ghosts make fast friends with, like the basilisks in the beginning of this, and
kind of. We see them having like strained relations with Herzog serpents, Ketzog serpents later on, and who can blame them?
Sort of.
Like Domor,
but they made friends with them before that incident, right?
Yes.
So when they were immediately the reason that the relationship was strained there afterwards, and the reason that the serpents were so upset by what had happened was because they were friends and they had just been saved in an ambush.
Yes. Yeah, there's that. Well, and because they fired artillery at them.
well, yeah, okay. Maybe they'd have been shaken up about any group that they had accidentally friendly fired with artillery. But I feel like it was probably had more effect because they were the ghosts.
Yes, and you're now going to be talking about the Navy, aren't you?
I'm going to talk about the Navy guns because
talk about the Navy guns.
Korvik just out of nowhere is just like, so we have this building we want to destroy that's probably causing this psychic storm. Well, why don't we just call in the Navy guns? You know, like we could do any time, but we never do because that's something that never happens.
Korvik goes, what would Gaunt do?
I feel like that was just like think outside the box, to be honest. And then Korvik's plan was call in the Navy guns.
Like, hey, this is very...
I want to ask why that's outside the box, though. Why? Because they suggest, this is what I feel like, again, this is like, it almost feels like Abnett coming up with a scene he wants, and then trying to fill it in later on by having the Navy commander go, well, that's not something we usually do. We always know that the squadrons take care of the ground attacks once it's out.
I think the implication was supposed to be, this is unreliable. We don't do it because we might just end up blowing up our own troops. But then this guy just turns out to be such a damn good shot.
Yeah, and then they were exactly on target, like so precisely. They take out a single building. It's amazing.
I really liked the way the Navy were characterized here, where they're like, this is a real way you wage war. They're looking down like, I'm glad I'm not down there. This is how you really wage war. From up here in safety, pressing a button to fire the ship's guns. Right?
Yes, but also like agreeing to because the guy... just because Korvik asked him, and what did the Navy officer say to the guy? He says something like, "What is your take on this guy?"
Yeah, he was like, "Do you trust? Wait, is he mad? Do you trust him?" And he goes, "Yes, and yes."
Yeah, that was it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I also liked at the end as well. Like, you see this culture in the Navy where the guy like gives a message and he's like, "I knew that bastard would do it." He's like, "Sorry about the language." He's like, "Very good," and then he's like, trying not to smile, like the way that's described. Oh,
yeah. I
love the Navy
they're like
story.
They sort of have the posh kind of aspect of the Blue Bloods, but without taking themselves too seriously. If that makes sense.
They're human still, you know.
Yes.
They still,
they're not portrayed in a kind of.
They are reserved, but they aren't superior, and they kind of have. Yeah.
Anyway, I like that aspect, even though it brings the question of why the fuck don't they just use the guns more often? There's got to be so many scenarios where you could orbitally bombard something. If you have, it's like in real life, air superiority is so key to all ground invasions and all land like conflict in general. And you just have to think like, what is better than air superiority other than
avoid
having okay, avoid shield, but like having like an artillery platform stationed in orbit above your target. It feels like it could not get better than that.
Look, 40k is a setting that runs on rule of cool quite a lot. And you need to justify pushing little plastic army men around on a table. And it's hard to do that if the Navy just shoots everything from orbit.
Well, yeah, I can agree with that. But then they did in this scene.
And it's very cool. Don't think about it too much.
Okay.
You're not wrong. I thought it was good to see Korvik take charge and do a good job of it. I like the Navy attitude. I like this story.
Yeah, it's a good one, I think, out of the collection. So the next one is Larkin.
Yes.
And this one is trippy. And this one leaves you with so many questions.
Oh, yes. Unreliable narrator.
Absolutely.
The story.
Absolutely. So I actually looked up the symptoms that he describes because I was curious as to whether Abnett had kind of gone with anything specific, or whether he'd had a thought of what this would have been in terms of an actual real life, issue.
Okay.
And it was very unclear. It could have been schizophrenia, or it could have been severe epilepsy.
Bit of both.
Was as close as I could tell, or a bit of both. Like clearly Larkin has medicine which he doesn't take, which is a terrible idea.
Well, it didn't seem to like. It didn't seem like it was his choice to not take it. It was more like, I ran out. Oops. Oh no. I'm not in a good place.
Well, no, he says something like,
sometimes I forget
have medicine.
to take it. Sometimes I sometimes I forget to restock.
Forget that I don't have any. Yeah.
And he's there like, here's my empty medicine box. It's like, ooh.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Because Abnett pushes really hard on the mystery of whether the angel was real or whether the angel was fake and just part of his imagination.
Yep.
Now, we know one aspect of this story is not fake and is not a part of his mind.
Yes.
And this is such a huge
Which is the cloth
point
thing at
because
the
it
end.
comes up later on as well.
Unless...
No, not that.
Oh, okay.
Not that. Not the cloth. Because the cloth, the people who are having hallucinations, there's an episode of House
I was going to say, he could just be imagining the cloth at the end.
Well, he could be, or you could imagine that he got it from something else, as opposed to just ripping it off something he had, or something like that.
Okay, what was your point going to be?
There is an item in this story that turns up later on in the bit with the Elder, and this has huge implications for me.
Scope?
The scope that sees through everything, the scope that tells things as they are, the scope that Larkin uses to tell if someone is telling the truth, and the scope that is given to Milo at the end in the last story, who can see the Eldar through it. So this is a scope that cuts through the most powerful psychic abilities.
So Larkin doesn't believe that necessarily. I think the implication isn't so much like Larkin believes this scope shows the truth. It's Larkin believes he sees the truth when he looks through a scope, and this is his scope. That felt like the implication to me, except for the bit of Milo there. But an explanation of Milo there could be his delusion's kind of broken by, he's having these delusions brought on by something, and he is told, if you look through this, you'll see the truth, and he looks through it. Maybe just being told
and
that
he
and
does.
through it, it lets you see,
I mean, he's already Milo.
Like,
the problem there is that he's already questioned like 50 times.
Yes,
in his head.
He's already resisting this. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the scope turns up. Does it not turn up in Necropolis as well? This magic scope that lets you see through, because
it does feel through it because he's got this thing about it.
He uses it to look through some psychic bullshit in Necropolis, I think.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. I feel like if you had this scope, though, you would use it for that. If you, even if the combination is just because Larkin is not questioning the fact that the Eldar are weird or not, or whether the Eldar are there or not at all, until he looks through the scope and suddenly sees the Eldar.
Yes.
It makes me wonder, like,
I don't think it's a magic.
How does this
scope.
fit into the world?
I don't think it's a magic scope. I think it's an interaction between Larkin and his psychosis, which has got some sort of like latent psychic thing about it, and him looking through scopes. That's what I think it is.
And Milo, maybe, who's also slightly psycho.
Milo's got some weird shit going on himself. Don't think about it too much. I don't think it's a magic scope. I don't think it's supposed to be a magic scope.
It's not a magic scope that is just like this item that would have just, humbled the Emperor even.
I don't think so.
No, okay. It seemed interesting that he used it in this way in that story. That's all I was focusing on. And then it turns up later. It becomes like it continues to be relevant.
The Angel of, aside from that whole delusion psychic thing, there's also an element to Angel of Bucephalon where like his own psychic thing is actually helping him a bit because the Angel's encouraging him, even if it's also being a real bastard to him. And like he thought he was running initially, he ran away, he like broke, but he, it all worked out. He got up there and he fucking got the target.
The Angel does an impression of Commissar Gaunt and scares him into doing his job.
Yeah. But also, he ended up in the right place to do that. There's something going on, and it's not made obvious what is going on. It's kept like, we are like in the world of the unreliable narrator. We don't see much beyond Larkin gets the job done, and this is what's going on in Larkin's head.
Yeah, so we are told in that story, at the end of that story, he says, where's the angel? And somebody points out that there's an angel
That's the
on
only
the
thing. That statue over there.
Yeah, on the it's above the door or something. There's like a statue of an angel.
Yeah.
And this made me think as well, because there's another conversation in one of the stories about a story of angels coming down and saving the men of the planet or the people of the planet.
That's
or whatever
in the
it is.
same one.
And
that's the angel asking, do you believe that happened?
Yes, okay, that's in the same story, is it? And then they have that conversation about that. Yeah, I for some reason I had that story in my head, but I didn't realize it was from that same story.
Yeah, in fact, that's a good point, because the angel himself tells Larkin, and the message Larkin gets is, does it matter if it was real or not, if it did the job?
Yes. So the angel itself is kind of
answering
postulating that it of its own existence. It was a weird one.
Yeah. Mad Larkins.
he seems a lot more. I don't know whether he seems a lot more grounded in some of the other stories, but he definitely doesn't come across quite as crazy as when we see from his inside his own mind.
Yeah, we know him to be like a little bit etchy and very like nervous and untrusting almost, but we see like, oh shit.
Yeah, maybe it begs the question of how many of the other characters are far more crazy from their perspective.
It was said that Larkin's like it was that dubious him even getting in. Like he got in basically because Corvette got him in basically.
Yes, yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, I remember that bit. So the question, another question around this story I had was, I wonder how much research Abnett did on actual sniper tactics, because he goes into great detail of like the way that Larkin takes the shot, like the position he's in, and how he goes about breathing and everything. I wonder whether he'd had like a conversation with like actual military snipers or something about this beforehand, or whether that was all just like.
Dan Abnett goes to a considerable degree to do research for most of his books, if memory serves.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about that. So
there's a lot more I can talk about. For example, when we get to Titanicus, I've got a fair bit I can say there.
Oh, okay. All right. Am I right in thinking we've exhausted the Angel of Bucephalon?
Yes.
Which puts us onto that hideous strength. A character study of Bragg.
Which is probably my favorite, if not, but definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite story in this group.
Yeah, so before this story, we're generally given a view of Bragg, which is that he's a bit of a simple Jack type character. He's not, he's almost not mentally developed as how he's portrayed sometimes.
Yes, he's like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Or he's portrayed that way at least.
Yeah.
I was going to say that he reminds me of John Coffey from The Green Mile.
Ah, yeah, okay. That's a good comparison. Either way, we get the impression here that actually it's a bit of a front to some extent, and that Gaunt knows this, and Gaunt will gladly use that. So the premise of this
almost
story
feels
is Gaunt knows there's a man on the inside. Gaunt wants the man on the inside to trigger it, wants to draw out an ambush. So to do that, he wants the man on the inside to feel confident that they're being led by someone who's just not tactically brilliant. So he puts Bragg in charge, who he knows is actually capable, in spite of appearing dumb. And once they're
this is not really the premise though, because we aren't told any of this either. This is once again, as you were saying, this is like a hidden information, because all we get from the beginning is Bragg is going on a mission.
Yes, and we're given it from the perspective of the inside man in the convoy, because we think he's an idiot. We think we're told like other people in the Ghosts felt like Gaunt was putting him on a suicide mission because they knew they wouldn't make it.
Yeah, Kolbeck says, "Don't waste Bragg," which is the line, I guess, there from the perspective of like, why are you putting this guy? We could maybe get, because they all think it's a suicide mission, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but they're like, maybe if you put like me in charge or something, Kolbeck says, or something like that, we might be able to pull this mission off. But don't waste Bragg just because you think it's a suicide mission.
And Gaunt knows that if they send him with somebody like seemingly competent, then they won't actually pull off the ambush. He needs to draw it out. So they send Bragg because he knows Bragg is competent. We find that out at the end.
Yes.
We see also the interaction with these troopers who are like kind of not troopers. They're like, I guess the people
engineers
of that planet, the locals,
non-coms,
the locals,
non-combatants.
Yeah, who are very like, you're a bunch of idiots who don't know what you're doing here. We're all going to die because of you. Blah blah blah. They're like very distrustworthy of them, and one of them, it turns out, was actually an inside man all along, and yeah, Bragg managed to root him out.
He was probably the least argumentative of the people there, until of course Bragg points out that, and we're given the idea that was actually Bragg's idea alone, and not part of Gaunt's plan.
I think it tells us that they had like a conversation beforehand. It doesn't say,
but Bragg says almost explicitly, "I did this on my own. This wasn't part of. This wasn't something Gaunt told me to do. At least
I thought that I don't remember that. I remember him saying, "Were you told? Did you figure? Did Gaunt tell you that man was a coward?" And he said, "No, I figured that out on my own." I don't think that was referring to the whole plan.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a fair point. That might have been what they were saying there. Yeah, no, that might have been it.
Because he'd
But
been
I do
playing
feel
it up
like
and being like, the commissar says this about everything, just playing up the stupid acts the whole time.
yeah, we do see a lot of Bragg actually making command decisions though that actually seem pretty intelligent at the time. Obviously, sends the non-combatants into the back where the cargo is because he knows they're not going to shoot the cargo because they want the cargo.
Yep.
He then also pulls off a seemingly inhuman stunt that the first time I read this, I remember asking you if he was an Ogren because he attaches two, like, I don't know, 50 cal machine guns would be the equivalent in real life, I guess, because they're supposed to be mounted to a vehicle.
Yep.
He attaches two 50 cal machine guns together and fires them from the hip.
He's a big guy.
That is seemingly inhuman, though.
That hideous strength, as it were.
Yes, yeah, apparently so. But I really like that story. It was a
It's a nice little wholesome story where he beats up.
Incidentally, you know where the name Hideous Strength comes from?
It feels familiar.
C.S. Lewis novel.
Ah.
Some of these names, in fact, if you notice, a lot of these names are like pretty interesting little literary references that Dan Abnett has snuck in there.
Ah, okay, that's cool.
So Sound and Fury, that's from, I believe, William Faulkner.
Okay.
So like, there's a lot of like, because that's a Dan Abnett thing, little references you wouldn't normally notice.
Competently executed, as opposed to some authors. We'll get to them one day.
Oh,
we'll get
there someday.
So speaking of that, though, the next story
Permafrost
with Ron and Gaunt.
It's almost the
now.
opposite.
This feels like a huge trope to me.
Yeah, we've got to work together to survive. I really liked. Well, I felt like it was a really cinematic story. We're described like the scarlet ice or crimson ice or something of this world. There's like the whole thing of the living ocean of hydrocarbons. That whole scene at the ending where they blow up the ice is very cinematically described.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. I mean, he mentions the fact that the living ocean, as you said, it didn't have to be the living ocean. It could have just been there's some water there. It could have been anything, but it didn't have to be as you said, as cinematic as
it's basically an oil moon covered in ice.
Abnett is a very, very cinematic author, and we'll talk about this in many, many stories to come.
Yeah, I have read No Fear.
Yes.
No Fear.
There's one moment in that story that I felt was really jarring and didn't fit the character at all. Do you know what that is?
Okay.
It's where Gaunt says, "If I'm ever brought down as low as you, I'll kill myself," to Vaughn.
Oh,
I was like, what the hell, Gaunt?
I feel like he sort of. It sounded like to me that he'd been kind of annoyed by Ron's lack of Gaunt tried to extend an olive branch, and Ron kind of just set fire to it, and I feel like the that reaction was kind of like in spur of the moment sort of try to recover a recovery if anything.
Fair enough.
It was a bit weird. It was a bit.
I don't want to be equal to you anyway, because then I would kill myself. It's like Jesus Christ.
And Ron says, "I'll hold you to that," or something like that. Yeah, I feel like it was way too convenient that the main character and his only antagonist within the actual ghosts just happened to be in this scenario.
Yeah.
It kind of, to an extent, though, it needed to be done because of what happens in the short story that we will get to after this. Not Ghostmaker, but the one from the perspective of an artist, a sculptor.
Okay, yeah, I get you. All right, we'll come back.
Because other than instances like this, we don't really see much development between Gaunt and Major Ron.
Yeah, that's true. Blood Oath, then, a story focusing on Chief Medic Dorden and his place in the regiment. Him and some volunteers try and hold out and protect the wounded. Not just any wounded. Blue Bloods. Dorden actually is properly compassionate.
And not just any volunteers. Like half of Gaunt's command staff.
Yes.
Which seems incredibly strange and unlikely, considering Gaunt was willing to sacrifice an entire planet to make sure that he had fighting men.
Gaunt had his orders. He had to pull out. So he went, okay, here's what you can do. And then,
I can see. I can. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah, he let half his. Yeah, why did he let Corbeck in? Yeah,
He let Corbeck, his second in command. He let his chief medical officer and several other named sort of side characters. I guess they're not the main characters. Obviously, Dorden and Corbeck are the two main characters there.
Yes.
But yeah, it just amazed me because it seemed to go against the very principle of the founding of the Ghosts, which was,
keep them alive. Keep the ones that matter.
Keep them alive. Yeah. If you think it's impossible, which I assume they thought it was impossible in this situation because they are retreating from an overwhelming horde of enemies.
Well, we do find out though that there is like that special link between Corbeck and Dorden. Dorden having, it turned out in the past a long time ago, having delivered Corbeck and saved his mother from dying in childbirth. So I imagine Corbeck could have maybe twisted Gaunt's ear with that one and been like, "You'll fucking regret it if you don't let me go."
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we can see from Corbeck's perspective of why he would have wanted to be with Dorden there, but I do find it kind of strange that that Gaunt allowed so many of his officers to be put at such risk there. It does seem a bit weird.
I mean, you say so many. There's Corbeck. Who else was an officer?
Yes.
I don't think there's any other officers.
His second in command.
Yes.
And his chief medical officer.
Yeah. Oh, just like okay. Yeah, those two. Yeah.
One of which won't even hold a gun, which I can see that as being a good character point. I like the aspect of Dorden as the pacifist who just keeps everyone alive so that they can fight. But it does seem kind of did seem kind of funny in that aspect. Anyway, I've said enough about that.
Yeah. There's three things I want to note here on this story. We get a more sympathetic portrayal of the Blue Bloods. They're still assholes, but it's more sympathetic. And I guess it's also carrying on the whole Blue Bloods thing because that's a running theme in this story is the Blue Bloods.
Yes.
We've got Kathran bonding with one of the Blue Bloods, who's like a youth, like the Kathran equivalent in the Blue Bloods. Colchis, I think his name is.
Yes, something like that.
And we also get to see something interesting, which is about the Hog Skulls. So we learn in this story that this world used to be a world that belonged to the Hog Skulls, another regiment, who basically, they were like one thing the Gaunts have been, the Ghosts have been told is, one day we'll conquer a world and be awarded that, and that'll be our new Tanith. And that's one of the things that's like a motivation for the Tanith first and only.
Yeah, because Gaunt was given his command and a settlement right to the first world that he conquered outright. Was that the case? And he said he'd share that with the Tanith, I think. Was the line here.
And we learned that this was basically a new Tanith for the Hog Skulls. The Hog Skulls had conquered this, they'd gotten the rights to this planet, and that's why there was this weird hog theme going on around there. Because they're from the Hog Skulls.
And the pig's teeth or whatever he has, isn't he? It's like... it's an interesting... That is another interesting aspect of that.
Yeah, they get to like see, shit, this is what can happen to a new Tanith now. Well, they got a new Tanith. We'll get our new Tanith.
Oh yeah, and look what happened to them. Yeah.
But
it is a sort of
it's not an empty
sour
promise.
grapes kind of thing.
Yeah, they seem still fairly optimistic though. You know, for us, we looked at it and we were like, oh, this is what happened to their new Tanith. But the Ghosts are still optimistic. They're in good spirits seeing this.
We also look at it from a more external perspective in the sense that we know what the 40k world is like and how shit everything is.
Yes.
So it doesn't really surprise us as much as it might.
You say that, but they've lost their fucking home planet. They know how shit everything is.
I know, but like from maybe they don't. Maybe they think that could be like an isolated, incident. It could be just, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That happens. But in the sense that every planet, everything is going to shit constantly. Everything is fucked. Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that is as present in their minds as it is in ours.
Well, then, moving on, a simple plan, which is a character study of Kathran, where his team, I call it his team, it ends up being his team, they infiltrate a Chaos stronghold, and cause some collateral damage trying to survive. And then all of the Chaos troops start killing themselves.
Yes. It was a very interesting scene.
As I mentioned earlier, this is the first story that obviously feels like it's after First and Only and Menaside Epsilon. We see the returning characters of Bionics. Val's got the arm. Domor has got the goggles. We see... I don't think I've seen this in any other... Alright, I've seen it in very few other stories where there's environmental conditions and people are like dealing with like, crap, my bionics are acting up.
Yeah, so this is an annoying aspect for me. Like this is another comes back to the fact that it feels like the technology hasn't really changed much since. Like it feels like Abnett is working on modern ideas of what technology will be like in say 10 years, let alone and then going, oh well, I'm sure it'll be like that in 40k as well. So for a lot of things, they don't seem to have improved much at all.
You say that's like, oh, he wasn't thinking big. I think it's deliberate.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's accidental.
Be sure, but I don't think it's like, sure, this is a modern. I think it's like a very deliberate choice for it to still be shit.
Yes, but what I'm saying though is it feels like in some aspects. So for example, we talked before. Obviously, they have space travel. Some aspects of their technology feels like it's behind ours, let alone in front of ours. Obviously, they don't have computers, which is probably a huge downside, and would cause a lot of issues with lots of stuff. The thing is, there with the cybernetics, for example, though, they have cybernetics that they give to their mainline troops.
Yeah, this is also
that are
unusual.
Vulnerable to salt water.
Right, so this is also
How is that unusual?
No, the fact that they give bionics to frontline troops is unusual in 40k. Like you don't see that happening a lot in most 40k nowadays. Getting a bionic means you're like an officer or something. You're a frontline troop, you're probably not getting something, or if you are, you're getting a shit one, which I guess this fits.
Yeah, apparently if it's vulnerable to salt water, it's a pretty fucking shit one.
You get the budget ones.
That just blows my mind, though. Like, why is it so
Because you're
rare?
just a grunt. And you're not worth it.
We just get another man from another planet.
Grunt. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The people are the most...
in these times, be one among untold billions.
Yes.
Except all of their fights are on scales like less than World War II battles.
People are like, very expendable in 40k.
They're just never in the same place to fight at the same time.
That includes guardsmen. They're like people are churned up and used up by the.
This actually comes to a point that I was hoping to ask you, because this is a question an open question, I guess, because I don't think there's an answer in any of the books, at least as far as I can tell. What sort of size is the Ghost Battalion or regiment or whatever they're described as?
2,000 troops as of Necropolis.
2,000. Because they lose hundreds in just that short story with the artillery.
So I believe it was 3,000 of them on Tanith. Half of them were lost leaving, so it's like 1,500. They have losses over those stories, but then by the end of Necropolis, they've recruited some more, right? Or was it 2.5 left after Tanith?
I think it's about 2,000 infantry as of the Gaunt's deployment to Vervenhive.
Okay. So I think it was 2.5, it's between 2.5 to 3,000 at the end of, as they leave Tanith, I think, then.
Okay, so there is actually a reasonable number. It just seemed a bit. They lose a lot of men in an awful lot of these fights, and they actually describe numbers in that friendly fire artillery one. And Gaunt says he's lost something like 300 men and like another 200 wounded or something.
Yeah,
and I'm just sort of sitting there wondering, how big are these regiments? It just seems a bit very open ended, which is fine, because if he wants to be able to lose men in certain engagements and have the regiment still exist, then that's fine. It's just after a while, it's going to get a bit crazy when they've clearly lost hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of men, and the regiment is still, the ghosts are still here.
Well, unless you pull more into the ghosts, which is Necropolis.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I actually liked that bit really about that story. That was good.
So
that's
a simple plan. Well, I want to say one thing about that. It's a character study of Kathran. And at the start, we see, it really gives us insight. He's a very impressionable person, which is, I feel like it's unusual. Normally it'll show you a character and they'll be like, this is what this character believes. But we see him as, an impressionable person who's having a hard time forming his own opinion on Gaunt. He's, pulled between the two different extremes he sees in the regiment. He's also, we see he's not the most confident, but he, shows he's got good instincts, he's got good judgment. And it's, implied that is why people gravitate towards him as a leader when, in the absence of command.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that actually in the short story that we just talked about. The one was written of their lives. The one that was written 15 years later.
Yeah, that definitely has the impressionable, like he doesn't know what to think vibe. Yeah.
Like Catherine says to Gaunt or something, he says something like, Gaunt is berating him a little bit about the fact that he said he would marry the girl that he lost on Tanith, even though he would never see her again. And Gaunt says, like you were never going back anyway. What was the problem? And Catherine was just like, but the recruiter said, and Gaunt's like, he lied. and Catherine just sort of says in this like pathetic voice, he lied. And I was like, this is amazing. Like out of all the characters, Catherine is shown as being like definitely the most like immature and the youngest of the ghosts.
Catherine is like the young babby, except Milo. Yes. Yeah. So we also have the interesting like the wise judgment at the end. No, let's not kill him. This guy wants to die. Keep him alive. And the guy gets dragged away screaming.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Gaunt was. I feel like Gaunt wasn't thinking along the same lines.
It feels like Gaunt was testing him to me. I don't know if I'm interpreting maybe. A little bit there, but
he seemed to push. I feel like Gaunt pushed a little too hard on someone who is his
kill him,
like very young subordinate. Yeah, do it.
Shoot him in the head, young trooper. So okay, you get the honors.
Yeah, and then Catherine says, "I don't think we should," and Gaunt doesn't agree with him immediately. He says he's like, "Are you sure you sure we don't want to?" Like almost like pushing a little bit too hard, in my opinion. If he was just testing, because Catherine is very impressionable, as you said. So I feel like he would have caved.
I get you. Yeah,
like I feel like Gaunt might have been worried that he had made the right decision and then gone back on it because he pushed him too hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. Gaunt isn't written as if he's testing him, but it just makes. I don't know. I don't want to inject my headcanon into it. It would have made so much more sense if he was testing him. But you're right. He's not really written as if he is. You're right.
Yeah, I still agree though. It would have made more sense if Gaunt was testing him because he should have known in that situation.
Gaunt should have known. Yeah, you should. Yeah, like Con, don't kill this guy. He's screaming like, "Yes, kill me, please, hurry up and kill me!" Like, what are you doing? Don't kill this man.
Send me to my god.
Yeah. Like no, don't do that. And then we have one more flashback short story, which is introduced by Gaunt being like, Milo, you gotta stop this predicting things because he's gonna get us in trouble like it did on the ship. It's something dodgy. Like heavily implied, like, this is probably psychic. You gotta suppress that, you're gonna get in trouble. And then we have
stop anticipating my every move.
Send them in, and they're already on their way. They've already been sent in. So Witch Hunt is a story about his involvement in a gambling scam where they scam the shit out of the Volpone Blue Bloods. Is it Gilbert himself, I think?
It is.
I think it might, it is Gilbert, yeah.
They just fucking fleece him. And the Inquisitor is told, like, we think Milo's psychic. And you go, ooh.
This just blew my mind, though, right? So you have an Inquisitor. The Inquisitors are, like, built up in the 40k world as far as what I've read so far, to be these, like, almost lawless, kind of extremely powerful entities within the Imperium who go around and solve these crimes and solve weird events and stuff. At least on Eisenhorn, the sort of things that Eisenhorn is involved with are like so far above. Oh, this guy, he did like a gambling scam on us and I lost all my money. Please take him down.
Well, it also depends on which branch of the Inquisition you're in. The Ordo Hereticus exists to find psychers and mutants and traitors and heretics.
So not like the Anti-Gambling Commission or something?
Well, so a psycho on the ship is something an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor would be duty-bound to investigate, as opposed to the Ordo Malleus, who would be more like, yeah, that's not a demon incursion, I'm not too worried. Or Ordo Xenos, who are like, yeah, that's not an alien, not my jurisdiction, I don't care. Call the witch hunters, right? The Ordo Hereticus...
I'd have understood this, right? I'd have got this. I'd have been okay with that if it wasn't for the fact that she brings the ball and forces him to show her how it works at the end.
Yes,
it's like if this had been one straw in a million straws that had built up the story of him being a psyker and had brought him to the attention of the Inquisitor, as opposed to one of the Blue Bloods going, "This guy seems to know things he shouldn't. He did the scam, and I saw it, and it blew my mind." If it had been that I would have been okay with it. The fact that she brings the gambling ball thing into the office or the interrogation room and is like, "Show me how it works."
Sure.
Prove
it's not psychic.
Killed me.
Prove you're not psychic, kid. Yeah, it's a bit. This Inquisitor, this feels like very jarring, and I think that's because it's a very early story with an Inquisitor. It's almost like full of contradictions. She's determined.
Yes.
She talks about how it's just business. I just have to do it. But then she seems like upset, like her time's been wasted when she doesn't get to catch someone out.
Yes.
She's also like, oh, I'm an extremely, like we later find out she's an incredibly powerful psyker.
Yes.
But then it's like,
but she doesn't just read his mind and be like, "Are you a psychic?"
That could be dangerous. You could be.
Yes. So this is possibly one of the best examples, as I was talking about earlier, of Abnett creating a scene he wants to have and then being like, "How do I rationalize this by the character saying something afterwards?" Right. So he has this interrogation scene in mind. He's like, "I want the Inquisitor and Milo to be in the room," and Milo comes up with this clever and gives him some character development about how he's not one of the ghosts, he doesn't fit in, and the Inquisitor's like, oh, you don't fit in, you're not like the other boys, what's this? And then he's like, I'm just not a soldier, and she's like, oh shit. So they have that character development, and then he's like, right, how do I make this make sense?
It feels like Milo is fucking playing her.
It does. That's why she asks Gaunt if he's coached the boy, because he has the perfect answer.
Yes.
But I just feel it seems a bit strange because obviously then he has to rationalize why she doesn't just reach out with her incredibly powerful mind and be like, are you a bit psychic? No? Okay. Or yes, as the case is probably. In fact, all she had to do was reach out a little bit and he'd have been shot.
Yes. If he's psychic. Maybe he's psychic, who knows?
Who knows? The dreams, maybe. No, maybe just happened. But then again, everyone was actually affected in that story. Something I forgot to mention was that they suddenly learn a language psychically that they didn't speak before.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not good. Anyway.
Yes. So everyone was affected in that story, so you could rationalize a way that it's
everyone was horrifically they were becoming accustomed to chaos in a way they were not comfortable with. I think that was the idea there. But yeah.
But this story with Milo,
I want to say that's a very like Lovecraftian Eldritch thing. It doesn't make any sense, but it happened. It's like, oh no, and it's going to make it crazy. I did the actual descriptions in that short story were fantastic. And as well as the demon behind the wall and stuff, that was also like, those were well done, and you could actually tell from the fact that they were written much later that he'd clearly like developed his sort of style. But yes, anyway, that was Milo being tried almost for psyker abilities by a very powerful psyker. And we get it was actually really, I thought it was very fun to actually see the explanation of how the trick actually worked without the psychic stuff.
Yes, to see the fact that the entire scam could be done. It wasn't an issue.
Yeah, it was like in the big reveal.
That's part of why it was so insane to see an Inquisitor standing there asking him about this scam and being told that it was just some sugar.
It speaks to Gilbert like as well. He's going through all these fucking steps like, now you can't scam us. And then he just lets him handle the fucking ball.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the last of the short ones, and then they were all summed up basically in a final
in some
collection
dark and secret purpose, which is a final chapter set in the present. We see the ghosts, the blue bloods, an Inquisitor, and Eldar working together as cultists move on their objective. Now, this story...
Yes.
I mentioned before Sound and Fury, the McCall against the Dreadnought thing was really memorable. I remembered this going in. I was like, oh, I can't wait to read that story again.
Yes.
I did not remember this story at all. In spite of the crazy shit that happened in it, it did not stick out in my head. And it feels like really jarring. Like, it didn't feel as good as the other stories in this, in my opinion.
I liked it. I liked it for a few reasons. One of which was it was like group therapy, courtesy of a very powerful Eldar Psyker.
Yes, that was nice. On that note, I thought that was kind of fun. Eldar Psyker. We go into this. I don't remember this. And they're talking about their leader, the old one. I'm reading this like, I don't remember this story. Abnett, did you have fucking old ones in your second Ghost Gaunt book? What the fuck?
Oh, you mean...
And then it turns out it's just an Eldar who is called the Old One.
Oh, okay. That would have been kind of funny if going back you realized, oh shit, he's actually introduced this race like 1999.
The fucking
or
old
2000.
ones were present in a fucking Ghost Gaunt story. Just a minor note. What? No, they were not. But
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me
like,
if it turns up in Commissar Kane, but you know.
Old ones are not
Caiaphas
exist.
Kane.
They do not exist anymore in the 40k setting. They are extinct.
No. Okay.
So
I mean, that still wouldn't surprise me if they turned up in a Caiaphas Kane book. And Gaunt gets to duel one with his chainsword, or his power sword or whatever, and he wins like easily.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the Eldar. There's the group therapy. It's also a Eldar who somehow manages to accidentally create a warp storm they lose control of that starts summoning demons.
Yes, which the Inquisitor still thinks might be Milo at this point, right? She thinks that this boy who might have exhibited some like random psychic abilities that he used to gamble with might have created a warp storm so powerful that the Eldar lost control of it.
Yes.
That was the point where I was sitting there just completely mind blown by the complete sheer incompetence apparently of this Inquisitor who's supposed to be
extremely powerful psychically.
Yeah.
But to be fair, her judgment was impaired by this fucking warp storm, but still.
And it's kind of weird because this Eldar isn't a Farseer; it's just a warlock.
Well, they're mentioned as both. Sometimes it calls him a Farseer, sometimes it calls him a warlock.
Sometimes it says he was trained by the witch something. He said he was trained in witchcraft or something like along those lines.
Yeah, he is described inconsistently within one story. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really know enough about the Eldar in 40k. I mean, they come up sparingly in Eisenhorn, so I know a little bit about them from that. I know that doesn't Caiaphas Kane have like a complete like accord at some point with the Eldar, and he like goes and has a chat with them, and sounds like something he would do.
Yeah, and they turn up in Horus Heresy a bunch, obviously, but
yeah, well,
usually for an avatar to die to somebody. But
yes, this is a very weird early look. It feels very raw. The description specifically of the old one feels very out there. The Dire Avengers, they feel very like in line with my idea of Eldar. Although having them sit there and be like, "Yes, Rawn human," is quite funny.
It was amazing.
The Rawn human.
I love that interaction.
And Milo's like, "Rawn human."
Maybe the thing though, maybe the reason that I like that short story better than you did was just because, for me, because I don't know anything about the background of the Eldar or anything, the interaction between the Eldar and the sort of brainwashed humans was just amazing.
Generally, I liked that, although I felt the old one was characterized in a very weird way, in a way I'm not used to Eldar being characterized at all. Also, incompetently lost control of a warp storm. Also, not used to that. I'm used to Eldar.
That was a bit weird.
I'm used to Eldar incompetently, accidentally creating their own bad futures while trying to stop them. That's what I'm used to Eldar fucking up.
That's because a certain author likes to do that trope with the Eldar.
Oh, I've not noticed that's one author. Oh crap, we'll talk about that at some point in the future. I'm excited for that now. Yeah.
So the Eldar guys there.
Yeah.
The Eldar in that short story. So what we learn about them, as far as I know, is we have this old one, as you said. He has several underlings, one of which we get a name for.
Yeah, they're Dire Avengers, they're Aspect Warriors, so those are like elites from the Eldar warrior casts. Think of it that way.
Okay. And we're told about their patron gods. Like one is the Forge, and then there's Lilith of the Mystery or whatever it is. And
the Eldar have got their little pantheon, most of whom are dead.
Yes, and he gives the guy a sword which is named, and I was wondering if this sword is relevant to anything because
it's not a sword, it's a weapon, it's a gun.
Oh, is it a gun?
It's a gun, and it's
the way
not
it's described
to anything.
Oh, the way it's described, I just assumed it was like a sword or something.
Yeah, it's initially described like that.
He has a thing for naming shuriken pistols because we have someone else who has named shuriken pistols who will meet
shuriken pistols
way down the line. Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds impressive.
Yeah, it's basically weird Eldar tech weapons. It's a special one of those.
Okay, to finalize with the Eldar then, we also get told about people that can't send reinforcements because they have other things to deal with.
Are we talking about the Eldar not being able to come in?
Yes, so the Eldar guy says, why don't we just open the gate? We'll bring the Avatar through. We'll get some reinforcements. With an Avatar of Cain, nothing will stop us except for anything that can kill an Avatar of Cain. And then the guy's like, no, we have to close the gate because they have other things to deal with. There's nothing they can send us. And I was wondering if that was a reference to somewhere or something, an event happening elsewhere.
I have never heard. I think this craft world is called Dolphe or something. I've never heard of this craft world before, ever.
As far as I know, it has never appeared anywhere else.
Okay, so that was just a throwaway line, and it was nothing alluding to some bigger story in the background somewhere else.
Nope.
No. Okay, fair enough.
We just got to close the webway gate because we got to close the webway gate. I think this is actually what you described earlier, which I'm starting to see this pattern where Abnett has a story and he makes things up to make it work.
Where somebody will throw away a line later on, just be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm definitely seeing this pattern.
Yeah, so I just thought the entire thing was very cathartic. The idea that the men of Tanith, who lost their entire planet, who never got to fight for their planet, the thing that killed them the most, the thing they hate Gaunt for, at least in some cases, Major Ron particularly despise him for this, and we see them, particularly Ron. It's the squad commanded by Ron who gets like most whammied by the Eldar Psyker, and they believe that this is Tanith and this is their fight, and they get to fight against the forces of chaos finally to defend their homeworld. And I thought that was an impressively well executed kind of payoff for that.
I'm glad you felt that way, because personally, I did not. I didn't feel like it was cathartic as it was written. I was like, oh, the ghosts are being manipulated. And then at the end, I was told by a character, well, at least this was cathartic for them.
Yes. So I was kind of annoyed when he said that, because I was sitting there going, I feel like that was pretty cathartic. And then the character just states it, and I'm like, well, now I feel like an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot. I'm the idiot. That's the reason the character says it, because I'm the idiot. You got it. I'm glad you felt that way out of it.
I don't know, I felt like I'd just been like walked into it by Abnett. It was just like, he just like walked me down and held my hand and went, look at this cathartic scene. And then the character just states this at the end.
You felt like you got treated like an idiot. Would that be accurate? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't feel like you needed to say that at the end.
I get that vibe and so I'm gonna say I think he could have done a better job at delivering that vibe rather than just having a dude say it at the end. Yeah.
Okay. Although I will say, like, as I said, like I felt that going into that bit where he says it at the end before he went into that, it did feel quite a lot like that to me anyway, which is that was the vibe I got. Like the I think what sealed it for me was the descriptions of the guards and the way they were fighting and what they were saying about Tanith at the time and stuff. That sort of element that just sort of like that was what fed into that, I think, for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
Can we briefly mention the battle that is unbelievable by historians?
Yes,
because it was literally impossible, and so he doesn't even describe it.
Not a single person
just says,
dies except for that one sergeant who was like, "Oh, I'm so lucky." That poor man.
So I thought this was a joke almost. I thought Abnett had put this in as like kind of a
Sergeant Lerod, I think it was.
Yeah, the guy he let go first because he'd been really lucky in combat. Yeah. So it does feel like a joke. It was set up in a way, in like multiple ways, as with that sergeant as well, that set it up like a joke.
It was set up like a joke, and then at the end it was like a tragic note, like, and he was the only one who died. Yeah. And you're like, oh.
But it's tragic because they didn't record it in history because they didn't believe it. And also, this happens again in Necropolis. He does exactly the same. There's another bit in Necropolis where it's like, no one will ever know how they pulled this off, but it happened, and so we'll move on.
And that's something as well. I noticed this a lot in Necropolis, and I noticed it here. When Abnett wants to impress how impressive something is, he will take a pause, and then he'll be like, 20 men killed 5 billion troops. Full stop. And then he'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, he said they were...
Pause and hit you with statistics.
Yeah. Well, in this case, he said they were outnumbered by like 1,000 or something.
Yes.
And I can't remember if the maths checked out, but I remember being really confused because he then goes on to say that there was like 2,000 enemy or something.
No, the maths, like, I don't think he contradicted himself. It was just absolutely absurd. And I think the implication was that actually maybe there's like some Eldar psychic shit that's actually, maybe
the implication was there were no chaos forces. Well, I mean, that's what the historians decided.
Yeah, yep.
So
they decided that Gaunt must have made an assault on an unguarded open courtyard.
Well, it has to be because we've got 2 regiments, the Ghosts and the Volpone. Let's say did 2,000 on each, so that's 4,000. They managed to defeat 100,000 Chaos Troopers.
Yeah,
with a little bit of help from Eldar.
With a little bit of Eldar warp storm trickery, yeah.
Which, to be honest, if the Eldar did pull that sort of shit more often, maybe without the incompetent warp storms being released, they'd probably be in a better place in the galaxy right now.
You'd think so.
Mm.
So, is there an actual risk then, really, of chaos being able to use the webway?
The risk to the Eldar, yeah, like to the Eldar right there. Chaos getting the webway, they're going to come and kill us in our fucking craft world behind in the webway. Like, you want them taking the super highway that goes to all the Eldar places?
I thought they were kind of already in the webway, though. I thought Chaos had already gone in, and that was what Magnus's folly was.
Not in 1999 or 2000, when Ghostmaker was written.
Oh, okay, so that might be... Well, that's just a contradiction then, based on the time of the stories.
I believe in 2000, the webway was not just infested, but also, you have to remember that that's a specific part of the webway you're thinking of.
Okay, so the Emperor has his little part of the warpway that is now fucked by Magnus.
There are lots of parts of the webway that are a little fucked, and the bit that links up to Terra is a little fucked. But that's neither here nor there for this story, written in 2000, where it's just some little nobody's ever heard of it craft world that's needs to close the gate.
Yes. So I only have one other note for this story, and it is the fact that the Inquisitor Lilith sends Gaunt unsolicited nudes.
She does, doesn't she? And then Abnett uses this as an opportunity for some world building. Theft isn't just
to point out that Theft is not. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not just a replacement for fuck. It's actually a god.
it's like tree spirits or something.
Yeah, it's one of the tree gods or something of Tanith. Yes, but yeah, I just the idea of Inquisitor sending people psychic nudes just amused me. I was just like, okay, interesting one there, Abnett.
Yeah, just trying to be. Also, the whole Inquisitor, was it like her parents were killed by Eldar or something?
Yeah.
And she got obsessed with them, and then she just went off into the webway with them, never to be seen again.
Yes. So I when I first read this, I remember asking you guys, can you tell me what happens to her at the end? Because I had no idea where she went. She just disappeared from the story.
I'm going to say one interesting thing. We are going to see her again in a different series by Dan Abnett.
Oh, shit. I have no idea about that. Okay, fine. Okay.
She has an appearance in Ravenna.
Oh. Which is set before Gaunt's Ghosts, chronologically.
Yeah, a couple of years before.
Okay, that's interesting. Cool. But Ravenna wasn't written that long after that. It's like only a few years, like 4 or 5 years or something. I don't know. We'll get to that.
Well, Abnett's no J.R. Martin. He seems to get through the books like mad.
You know what? I was going to say that. Like, me and Jim often complain about how long it takes Abnett to write a book. And I look at this and it's like, oh, you wrote 1 in 1999 and 2 in 2000. Why can't you do that now?
Here's the thing. He's doing a lot of work. He's not just writing Black Library books. He's also running comics and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're complaining about it. It's not his singular sole focus. And every book he puts out, no matter how long it takes, is always of exceptional quality.
I think we've got through all of... Oh, only thing to note there, I guess, the Blue Bloods, they have like a bit of a reckoning, but also work together at the end.
They have their own like great lost battle, Ignix Major, which they get taken back to, so they see their own big failure.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's true.
I see. I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah, they mention it. It's just like an offhand note. The Tanith see themselves back at Tanith. The Blue Bloods see themselves back here.
But interestingly, Gaunt sees himself as Tanith.
Yes, and
Lilith has this really awkward kind of interjection where she just sort of goes, "Don't you see, Gaunt? You are of Tanith. It is your future and your past."
Yes,
It's like, what the fuck is she saying?
chief. Yeah, well, that's it. I thought that was effective. Now, so now you thought you saw the cathartic side and think this is bunk. I liked that. It's kind of like Gaunt realizing that actually he really is part of the Tanith first and only. He truly is one of them.
Yes, but so bluntly.
Oh yeah,
because she's the one who gives him that realization. She spells it out for him explicitly.
You idiot! Yeah, well, he needs to spell it out for him.
Yeah,
because he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't get it.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I think that about rounds that one up.
Time for.
So I guess overall, what did you think of all the stories as a group, though, as supposedly a book? Because obviously they are short stories collected into a book.
I thought the last story, which is supposed to be the culmination of it all, felt really jarring, and I wasn't big on it. I liked all of the character studies up until that. That's my take.
I concur.
Yeah.
I got nothing else I can really add there.
Yeah, I think it's a good one to have near the beginning if you're going to have a book like this, where it's like a bunch of collection of little short stories about the characters and giving you more fleshed out character development. It's a good one to have near the beginning of the series.
Yeah.
Not the first book, which it wasn't, thankfully.
Well, Ghostmaker, A Blooding, and The Hollows of Hell were the first stories, and that's something as well. I guess they had those out now, and he went, I want people to read these.
Yes, that's a fair point.
Why don't we do a clip show episode, except we don't have episodes to take clips from yet. Let's do it. Yeah
No, I think it worked from that aspect at least, so it's a pretty good one. I quite enjoyed it.
All right.
I mean, neither of the ones so far have been bad books. I mean, that's the thing. Abnett is a good writer at least, so
yeah,
they're always good books.
Well, with that, is it now time to move on to Necropolis?